No one's crazy. As we already have discussed, to understand how money works, we need to understand the behavior of our mind and the people around us, which is not governed by some set of rules like physics. If it was physics, we could have easily learned it and understood it once and for all. But that's not the situation with the money. Author says one statement about money that what seems crazy to you might make sense to me. What does he mean? Everyone has their own unique experience with how the world works. Why is that? Because each one of us has different beliefs, goals, and forecasts. We have had different lives shaped by different and equally persuasive experiences. Author says your own experience of life is more compelling than what you learn secondhand, which means someone telling you a story and you listening to that story could be completely different when you're actually living that story or when you're actually the cast or hero of that story. And that's when you shape your own beliefs, thinking, opinion, and we have had different lives shaped by different and equally persuasive experiences. Like everyone has their own story to tell, and the story is a story. It is not a right story or wrong story. Author says your personal experiences with money make up maybe 0.0000001% of what's happened in the world, but maybe 80% of how you think the world works. Some of the examples are given by the author here, like the person who grew up in the poverty thinks about risk and rewards, but the child of a wealthy banker cannot fathom if he tried. The people who grew up when inflation was highly experienced are different than the people who grew up with the stable prices. The stockbroker who lost everything during the Great Depression experienced something else than the tech worker basking in the glory of late 1990s can't imagine. The Australian who hasn't seen a recession in 30 years has experienced something no American ever has. And the list of experiences are endless. Maybe in the coronavirus pandemic, you're experiencing a job loss or salary cut, but someone who is getting promoted and even getting promoted with high income salary. So, studying history makes you feel like you understand something, but until you have lived through it and personally felt its consequences, you may not understand it enough to change your behavior. We all think we know how the world works, but we have all only experienced a tiny sliver of it. As investor Michael Batnick says, some lessons have to be experienced before they can be understood. We are all victims in different ways to that truth. The economists wrote, our findings suggest that individual investors willing to bear risk depends on personal history, especially experiencing early in their adult life. It's not dependent on your intelligence, education, or sophistication, just the dumb luck of when and where you are born. If you grew up when the inflation was high, you have invested less of money in bonds later in life compared to those who grew up when the inflation was low. Or if you happen to grow when the stock market was strong, you invested more of your money in stocks later in your life compared to those who grew up when the stocks were weak. Two groups of people separated by the chance of their birth year, and they go through life with their completely different view on how stock market works. Their view of money was formed in different worlds. And when that's the case, a view about money that one group of people thinks is outrageous can make perfect sense to another. Every decision people make with money is justified by taking the information they have at that moment and plugging it into their unique mental model of how the world works. Those people can be misinformed, they can have incomplete information, they can be bad at math, They can be persuaded by rotten marketing. They can have no idea what they are doing. They can misjudge the consequences of their actions. But every financial decision a person makes sense to them in that moment and checks the boxes that they need to check. They tell themselves a story about what they are doing and why they are doing it, and the story that has been shaped by their own unique experiences. Let's take an example of lottery tickets. Americans spend more on them than movies, video games, music, sporting events, and books combined. And who buys them? Mostly poor people. The lowest income household in the US on average spend $412 a year on lottery tickets, four times the amount of those in the highest income groups. 40% of Americans cannot come up with $400 in an emergency, which is to say, those buying $400 in lottery tickets are by and large the same people who they say couldn't come up with $400 in emergency. They are blowing their safety nets on something with a 1 in a million chance of hitting it big. That seems crazy to me. It probably seems crazy to you too. But I'm not in the lowest income group. You are likely not either. So it's hard for many of us to intuitively grasp the subconscious reasoning of low income lottery ticket buyers. But strain a little, and you can imagine it going something like this. Poor people have to live paycheck to paycheck, and saving seems out of reach. Their prospects of much higher wages seem out of reach. They cannot afford nice vacations, new cars, health insurance, or homes in safe neighborhoods. They cannot put their kids through college without crippling debt. Much of the stuff the rich people who read finance books either have now or have a good chance of getting, they don't. Buying a lottery ticket is only time in their life they can hold a tangible dream of getting the good stuff that the rich people or that you guys already have and taken for granted. They are paying for a dream, and you might not understand that because you are already living that dream. That's why they buy more tickets than you do. You don't have to agree with this reasoning. Buying a lottery tickets when you're actually broke is still a bad idea, but I can kind of understand why lottery ticket sales persist. And the idea, quote, what you're doing seems crazy, but I kind of understand why you're doing it, unquote, uncovers the root of many of our financial decisions. Few people make financial decisions purely with a spreadsheet. They make them at dinner table or in the company meeting. Places where personal history, your own unique view of the world, ego, pride, marketing, and odd incentives are scrambled together in a narrative that works for you. History of money, for a topic which is so influenced by emotion versus fact, this is a problem. And it helps explain why we don't always do what we are supposed to do with money. We all do crazy stuff with money because we're all relatively new to this game, and what looks crazy to you might make sense to me. But no one is crazy. We all make decisions based on our own unique experiences that seem to make sense to us in a given moment. That's all for this chapter. We'll be dealing in the next chapter in the next video.